The Exegesis on the Soul is a text that offers a truly unique and surprisingly relatable exploration of human nature, our inner struggles, and the yearning for something more. Forget simplistic good versus evil. This work explores the soul's journey through allegories of feminine identity, a surprising encounter with Homer's Odyssey, and even the bizarre idea of the soul having its own inner womb for spiritual rebirth. So, we're going to explore the Gnostic perspective of who we are, where we come from, and the passionate longing that lies at the heart of our being. While a lot of Gnostic writings talk about important female figures like Sophia, who's important in their creation story and why we're in this mess, the Exegesis on the Soul does something different. It sees our individual soul as having this feminine side. The text keeps using feminine pronouns and images for the soul. Its initial state with the father is described as virginal and androgynous, suggesting a pure, unblemished feminine essence with a unified being. Then, when the soul came into this physical world and got caught up in wanting earthly things, it's described as becoming like a prostitute. This powerful metaphor highlights the soul's defilement and loss of its original purity through its attachment to the physical and sensual. The path to redemption is subsequently framed as the soul's repentance and return to its true virginal feminine essence. This involves a process of purification, often symbolized by turning inward of the soul's womb for a spiritual baptism. The ultimate goal is the soul's reunion with its divine counterpart, often depicted as the bridegroom representing Christ or a higher spiritual principle. This union in the bridal chamber signifies the restoration of the soul's original harmony and its ascent back to the divine realm. Building upon the unique way the Exegesis on the soul employs feminine imagery to describe the individual soul's journey, we also find the text engaging with the wider cultural landscape of its time through its allegorical interpretation of classical literature. Specifically, the explicit reference to and interpretation of the story of Odysseus and Circe from Homer's Odyssey, and it's a relatively rare instance of direct engagement with classical literature within the Nag Hammadi corpus. The way they use the Circe story is clever. Circe was this lady who tricked Odysseus's men, turned them into pigs with her magic, and kept Odysseus around with her charm. Here, Circe isn't just about simple physical pleasure. Instead, she represents the seductive power of the material world as a whole, and how our attachment to physical bodies and earthly desires can trap us and make us forget our true spiritual path. Just like Circe trapped Odysseus's friends and almost stopped him from going home, this physical world, with all its material distractions, can trap our soul and stop it from getting to where it really belongs. But Odysseus fought Circe and kept trying to get home, and that's like our soul trying to fight off the temptation of our bodies and this world to journey back to the divine pleroma. The Exegesis on the soul had this interesting and kind of strange thought that our soul had its own inner womb, a space that could be turned inward for a form of spiritual baptism and cleansing. This imagery is less frequent in other Gnostic texts, where purification is typically depicted through metaphors of fire, light, or ascent. What this inner womb might mean is that it could represent the soul's capacity for self-reflection and introspection, a space within the individual where the inner transformation and spiritual rebirth can occur. Just as a physical womb is the site of gestation and the emergence of new life, the soul's inner womb might symbolize the potential for the divine spark within to be nurtured and to give birth to a renewed spiritual consciousness. Also, this turning inward idea suggests we need to pull away from the outside world and focus on the inner self to do this spiritual work. This fits with the Gnostic idea that inner knowledge is the key to salvation. So this baptism in the soul's womb could symbolize a cleansing of the soul's impurities we picked up from being in this physical world, a washing away of ignorance and letting in the divine light or truth. It's a unique way of showing that the Gnostic belief of salvation is not solely an external act, but also an internal process of self-discovery and spiritual regeneration within the very fabric of the soul. The text of the Exegesis of the soul still relies on the Gnostic idea that this physical world is not the best place to be, but it doesn't spend a lot of time talking about how evil the Creator is. Instead, it focuses on how our souls were attracted to the fun and fake pleasures of this world. It's like we looked in a mirror, this physical world, and liked what we saw so much we wanted to stay with the reflection instead of remembering who we really were. This focus on our own choices regarding our downfall is a bit different from other Gnostic stories that mostly blame outside forces. It means getting better isn't just about knowing the true God, it's also about changing what we want and pointing ourselves back to the divine origin. As we keep looking at how the text of the Exegesis on the soul uses stories, we see these interesting characters called the soul's adulterers and their offspring who are described as dumb, blind, and sickly. These are symbols for the various enticements born from the soul's metaphorical prostitution with the material world. They are not explicitly defined, leaving the precise interpretation open to various theological and psychological readings. But what exactly do these adulterers and their offspring stand for? Here's a few ideas. The adulterers probably represent all the tempting things, the desires and attachments to this physical world that pull our soul away from where it belongs with God. This could be anything from wanting things that feel good, wanting to be important in the world, or just being plain ignorant, or anything that keeps us tied to this temporary, not-so-great part of existence. Then their offspring, the dumb, blind, and sickly ones, embody the negative consequences and spiritual deficiencies that arise from the soul's entanglement with these earthly adulterers. Being dumb might mean our soul can't speak the truth, can't connect with God's word, or can't even say who it really is. Blindness likely means we can't see what's going on spiritually. We're stuck in the dark of not knowing and being fooled by this world. And sickness could be the inherent corruption, suffering, and spiritual weakness we get from being separated from God and stuck in this flawed material world. So these characters are a powerful way of showing how bad it is for our soul to chase the fleeting pleasures of the material over its connection to the eternal divine. Understanding them helps us see why the Gnostics thought getting away from this world and knowing the truth was so important for healing our inner selves. Another fascinating and somewhat unusual concept explored in the Exegesis on the soul is the notion that the soul was originally androgynous when it was with God. This isn't just in the Exegesis on the soul. You see it in other Gnostic ideas too. Before we got bodies and came into this world, our soul was whole and complete, not divided like we are with genders. It was perfect and close to God. The idea of an androgynous origin often symbolizes a state of wholeness, unity, and perfection. But when the soul came into a physical body, it changed. It became one gender or the other. This brings up some interesting questions. Did getting a gendered body make our soul less complete than it was originally? Is that longing we feel to connect with someone else, a partner, actually our soul trying to get back to that original feeling of being whole, of being both male and female together on a spiritual level? The Exegesis on the soul doesn't give all the answers about why the soul split or what it really means for our journey here. In fact, it leaves the idea somewhat open to interpretation, inviting further reflection on the nature of the soul's identity beyond the constraints of the physical form. It's something to think about. What is our true identity beyond just being a man or a woman in this world? How does the Exegesis on the soul suggest we should live in this physical world, considering its view of the soul's origins and desires? This leads us to their perspective on asceticism. Now, a lot of Gnostics were into this idea of giving up worldly pleasures, but the Exegesis on the soul, in how it talks so much about the soul wanting to be with its true partner and feeling that deep yearning, might be suggesting a slightly different way to look at things. Maybe it's not all about just saying no to everything we desire. The fact that the text keeps talking about this longing and desire could mean that completely ignoring our feelings and needs, even the ones that seem earthly, might not be the best way. Instead of just trying to kill off all our desires, maybe the point is to figure out what we really want, which is to be back with God, and to aim those feelings in that direction. So it's less about saying no fun allowed, and more about understanding what our soul truly craves and trying to fulfill that higher longing. It's a more balanced view where our natural feelings aren't just bad things to get rid of, but something to understand. We've talked about how we should live, the deep yearning to return to the divine, the adulterers that use their offspring to distract us and keep us present on the material world. But how does the soul get trapped here? The Exegesis on the soul presents the unique allegory of the mirror, which represents this physical realm. The soul becomes so captivated by its own reflection that it desires to stay here, and in doing so, it forgets its true home and origin and identity in the higher spiritual realms. This mirror allegory beautifully reveals the Gnostic understanding of the physical world as something of an illusion. Just as a reflection lacks the true substance of what it reflects, this world is seen as a temporary and less real copy compared to the true eternal reality. When our soul becomes attached to this reflection, it's like we get caught up in the sensory experiences and earthly things that lead us to forget our authentic selves and our connection to the divine source. Looking in the mirror and thinking that's the real you highlights how Gnostics saw ignorance as a big problem. We get so caught up in the shiny, tempting things of this world that we don't realize our true bright nature and where we actually belong. This mirror image, which you don't see a lot of in other Gnostic writings, is a powerful way to show how we got fooled by this world and why we need to wake up spiritually and remember that this isn't the real us or our real home. It tells us we need to look beyond the surface and see the true light of the divine. Some Gnostic writings go into a lot of detail about how the universe was made with all these different levels and beings, but the Exegesis on the soul doesn't do that as much. It talks about a higher spiritual place and this lower physical world, but it doesn't get overly complicated with long lists of spiritual beings or crazy creation stories. Instead, it really focuses on our story, the soul's journey. It talks about where we came from, how we ended up here, what we're going through, and how we can get back. The bigger picture stuff about the universe is there to give context, but it's not the main point. This makes the exegesis on the soul a bit different from Gnostic writings that spend a lot of time explaining the whole cosmic setup. This one's more about our own personal spiritual trip. While a lot of Gnostic writings say the main way to get saved is through getting that special knowledge, Gnosis, the exegesis on the soul also puts a big emphasis on this feeling of yearning, this deep desire or longing our soul has to be with its true partner and get back to where it started with God. It's not just about knowing fact, it's about this powerful emotional pull. This feeling of wanting to reconnect makes the soul's journey feel really personal and emotional, more so than in some other Gnostic texts that are more about understanding complicated ideas. It's like our soul doesn't just know it's separated, it feels it and it really wants to go back. This longing is what pushes the soul to say sorry and try to get back to the divine connection. So it's not just about being smart, it's about having this deep, heartfelt desire for something more. The way the exegesis on the soul ends is kind of open. It talks about the soul getting cleaned up and ready to be with God, but it doesn't show us the soul actually making it all the way back to its origins. This might mean that getting saved isn't just something that happens once you know the right stuff. It's more of an ongoing process and we have to keep working at it. The fact that it focuses on getting ready suggests that it's up to us to keep growing spiritually and keep wanting that reunion with the divine. It's not a guaranteed ticket. Just because we have some knowledge, we have to keep trying and purifying ourselves. This open ending leaves us with the idea that our spiritual journey is something we actively participate in, and the final getting back home is something we keep striving for.